this edition of the Executive Outlook, we are thrilled to welcome Todd James, founder and CEO of Aurora Insights. With an impressive career spanning over 2 decades in AI, data strategy, and digital transformation, his experience in leading AI strategy and technology innovation has helped transform businesses on the global scale. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this discussion today.
I'm very excited to know that how you got started and what motivated you to choose this career path.
It's interesting because I was talking to a group of students at university the other day. And, I basically told them the career that I've been in the last few years, that did not exist when I was sitting in their shoes. I think early on I got pulled into technology. I grew up at a time where it was really taking off. It was also for someone that did not have a lot of opportunities. I knew that if I could get into a computer science program, I could do well in it, that I would have an opportunity to pay bills and be successful. So the technology kind of pulled it in. What I would say around the artificial intelligence and that path, that probably goes back, a little over 10 years ago. I was in an operating role in a financial services company, and you could see the writing on the wall with what was going to happen around the compute power, the availability of data, and the emergence of some of the machine learning capabilities that just hadn't been there at scale. That put me in a position to really dig in, refine my skills, and start to lobby across an organization, that we should be thinking about it at a strategic level when I was within Fidelity. So if you're just starting, the kind of role you may have late in your career may not exist today. And that was certainly the case for me.
Excellent. I'm very excited to know that you have worked with Fortune 25 companies, right? So how the digital transformation looks like for those companies and what are the challenges they are facing?
I think at any level, you're going to have challenges working across different organizations. What I would say that was really exciting about, the Fortune 25 company, I led artificial intelligence, a company called Kroger, which is a $140 billion grocery retailer in the United States. And I was also chief data and technology officer of their data science, insights, and retail media business called 8451. What I would say there is what I found exciting about large organization is you have massive scale. You have unbelievable amounts of data. You have high velocity of data, and you have massive scale across an organization, across a customer set to have a huge impact in a way that makes associates and employees' lives easier through data and analytics. Now, what I would say is, a large organization, a Fortune 25, it's the ability to get things done requires a lot of time getting alignment, a lot of time working through the organizational dynamics. And so, I think sometimes with larger companies, I would liken it to a big ship with a small rudder. It takes a while to get it turned, but when you get it turned, you can have a very massive impact. I described to someone recently, when you look at the head of data and AI role at an organization, a large organization, you think it's about the technology. And the AI, very advanced technology, very advanced mathematics, but you're probably spending 30% of your time on the technology and about 70% of your time on the business and organizational side. Just to get alignment, to help people understand how AI can have an impact, to break through barriers so your technology teams have an opportunity to be successful. So there's a lot of time sitting in offices and having discussions with people to kind of clear the path. And I think that's what's kind of unique. The larger the company you get, probably the more time you spend doing it.
So you mentioned you have led the teams of AI and data in retail sector. So if anyone who is into the retail business, how they can leverage the data and what are some of the use cases they can start analyzing it and can see the impact in their businesses?
I've worked across several industries, probably spent the most time in financial services and retail. What I would say about retail is you think of the transaction volume. We have high transaction volume and high velocity. You also have high velocity of data associated with it. Lots of customer orders coming in, lots of movement of product and information across the organization. I found coming out of financial services, I was really excited to be in the retail space because there's a lot that you can do with the data. What I would say around use cases, the place I always want to start is how can you create a more seamless customer experience, giving customers what they want, when they want it. So personalization across your e-commerce. Increasingly, those barriers are breaking down into the store experience as well. The goal is to have a unified, personalized experience for customers end to end, no matter when they want to shop, how they want to shop, and how they want to communicate. From supply chain end to end, making sure you understand from the time that you look at the supplier all the way to the time that a finished product leaves your store. Understanding where it's at, where those components came from, where they are in their life cycle becomes very important. So the supply chain space, even to how do you route trucks? How do you route people around a warehouse to be able to put together orders that go out the door? Those are optimization problems. Those are AI problems. And the other really big one that I thought was a great opportunity for advanced analytics and data science was for store associates in a retail environment. Those are tough jobs. So how can you use data to make their job easier? It gives me the chance to have a better experience with that customer and actually delight them. If you are looking for high velocity of data and some of the challenges, often with tighter margins in some other industries, the retail space is a really exciting space from a data perspective. Now, depending on the organization too, high velocity of data doesn't necessarily imply that the data is in the condition that you want it. So it may also provide some opportunities to help enrich that data as well.
Very interesting use case you have shared. Thank you for sharing those. If a business owner is running in the retail industry, how they identify, like sometimes it happen, business owner does not know that I can optimize the process, right? They think I don't want to involve technology into this. I'm talking about the SM, small and medium businesses. How they can identify that, hey, this is the problem I can solve, and this is the time I can include the technology leaders and they can help me scale.
I think one thing is, and I'll start with, and then I'll give a little bit of a simplified formula that when I talk to business leaders, I'll share that with you. But the first thing is educate. Like they should watch your podcast would be one way in which, there's an education and an awareness component that I think is very critical. I think, we're going into a new age where data and the ability to activate it through advanced analytics is going to increasingly have an impact on a business's ability to compete. So it is incumbent upon those business leaders to continue to be those lifelong learners that are looking for ways in which to get a better understanding of how this new and emerging technology can impact their business. And I'm telling anyone anything they don't know, right? You learn, you change, and you grow, or you don't, you die. And that's true in nature, that's true in business. What I would say is I like to simplify it for leaders. I think AI has this aura and it's magnified in media and it's magnified in the things that we hear in the news. And I would say half the things we hear in the news a lot of times are vainglorious statements to grab attention for an individual or for a particular product. So you have to be careful with some of the hype. But at the end of the day, we've been optimizing businesses for decades, probably for centuries. Now, if you go back to the 50s and 60s and you look at Deming and Duran and what they did around Lean Six Sigma type approaches for optimizing processes, there were approaches that were put that helped business leaders change their business and optimize their processes. Then we got into an automation phase where anything that was yes or no, one or zero, deterministic, we could generally automate as long as it made economic sense. So that was another set of improvements that business leaders got their head around and figured out, how do I implement for those deterministic changes? Now, with AI, we have an ability to convert judgment problems into machine prediction problems. And what does that mean? If you're a business leader, anywhere you've got a bunch of people making decisions and you have or can generate data, that's usually a pretty good place to look for areas where AI can help you, because that's what AI does. It takes data, places where people are executing judgment decisions, and it increases the quality of those decisions or potentially activates those decisions. And so if you take that same lens of going back and saying, what were the tools when I was looking at Lean Six Sigma where I could apply that? Where do I apply automation? There's also a particular set of problems, and they tend to be around areas where you have a lot of people making decisions and there's associated data. That's where you now look for AI. It's funny how what's new is also, you can learn from what we've done in the past. I mean, this is a more rapid transformation than those others, but
Mhm.
it's, I would argue if you step back from the hype and you take a similar approach and say, okay, I get it, where I've got people making decisions and there's a lot of data, I should probably at least ask the question, can I do something with AI to improve the outcome?
So, what gaps do you see between the boardroom ambitions and operational realities when it comes to data and AI?
I think one of the gaps is the boardroom itself. I was reading recently that, about 53 to 55% of boards really feel a need to accelerate AI adoption. And I think that's good because I expect it to grow. You want boards saying, hey, I want to put pressure on behalf of the shareholders that we're going to make sure that we're using data to de-risk our future, to increase our competitiveness. So I think that's good. The challenge on the flip side of that is while about 50 to 55% of boards want that to happen, roughly 80% of boards have limited, minimal, or no knowledge or experience with AI. And you wouldn't expect them to. The boards are usually individuals that grew up very competent in an area, but they did not grow up through a career experience where they were deploying advanced machine learning models into operations to transform business models. So there's a huge gap there. I think starting one of the gaps between boardroom ambitions and reality is the boardroom capability itself. And I think that presents an opportunity for boards, one, to diversify in who they put on the boards and who they're thinking about. I think there's also an opportunity for individual boards, individual directors, and board members to increase their own AI education. And I know increasingly there are individual directors and boards themselves that are actually getting AI advisors to help them to increase their knowledge so that they can have a greater impact in their fiduciary responsibilities as it comes to this new technology. So that's a starting point. I would also say I do think that one of the gaps, and I had a dinner last night with a CIO from a large multi-billion-dollar firm, and we were talking about, there's another gap too. This is hard technology. It requires an ability to get the data into a position where you can actually activate it with artificial intelligence. And that takes a lot of cycles from CIOs, which at times takes them away from the business storytelling, backed by real value and impact that they need to be doing with the other members of the C-suite. And so I think another big hurdle is the ability to translate that technical vision into a tangible set of business outcomes and bring the other business leadership along on the journey. And when that doesn't happen, you don't get the right level of attention. You don't get the right level of focus. And, if you don't have the attention, you don't have the focus, you're not getting the funding. I think the friction points and the gaps around a lot of this is knowledge gaps and the ability to communicate in a common language across technology and business.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. So you mentioned about advisors. So how does the advisors make a difference than traditional consulting, and how it can benefit the boardroom, CIOs, and the leadership team?
I think there's several ways that I've seen are effective. And I'll talk about the mechanics and I'll talk about the who. One of which is, bringing in people that have been there, done that, and can describe how to position AI for value and scale for discussions with broad boardrooms through structured sessions. I've seen that works, that has an impact. The other thing I'm seeing is more of a coaching relationship, and I hate to use the word coach because it's a peer-to-peer discussion, but level of where an individual director, a C-suite executive will actually say, look, I want to get someone that has implemented these capabilities at large scale, work through the hurdles that come around the organizational dynamics of taking an idea and actually getting it woven into the strategic framework of the organization and setting up kind of a fractional relationship where that individual is kind of the guide on the side, providing insights in a structured way to help these leaders grow their expertise and to give them confidence in decision making as they go forward. So those are kind of the two forms where I'm seeing the advisors change, and I'm seeing more and more. I do think some of the traditional consultancies, and you see it in their own writing, right? A lot of smart people. These are great firms. And I think these firms still have a role going forward, but increasingly the pyramid model of coming in with a partner that has been in the consulting industry for decades and is able to manage a pyramid of junior consulting resources. With AI, less and less you need less and less of those junior consulting resources. And, I think too, a lot of leaders and a lot of companies are realizing that, there's something different between someone that actually had experience as an executive driving value in a large corporate organization and a partner at a consulting house who has not had to live with the decisions after the project is over. So I'm seeing more and more a desire, and I'm seeing executives that leave some of these top data roles and top AI roles becoming highly sought after from a advisory perspective, because, when they made a mistake, they had to live with it. They had to live within the organization in which they were driving change, which means you can't be very transactional in your interactions with other leaders. You have to think longer term about their priorities, because you're with them. You're not going away when the project's over. And so I see that as a bit of a difference evolving in terms of what consultants can offer, which is large teams come in, drive capabilities. That's probably becoming less and less important over time. And expertise of people that have sat in the seats and actually done the work becoming more and more important going forward. So that's a change I'm looking to see in the next few years. And we're starting to see it now.
Yeah, because nowadays advisors are in demand, as you mentioned it rightly said. But when we are running any company, organization, in that thing we need guidance. So that guidance and coaching is the right word. You mentioned it. Advisors can provide.
It was not uncommon for me from time to time to have kind of a board of directors on the side, or at times even a advisor. It's always good to get some of that outside in expertise. Where I think the opportunity is now is one of the biggest areas in the gap of expertise is, hey, I'm being told that data and AI are important, but I run supply chain, but I run financial product, but I'm head of brokerage. What does that mean for me? And having someone that can kind of work through them and help them navigate the technology, but in a way that makes sense to them as a business person, I think is we use in a golfing analogy. I'm a horrible golfer, by the way, but in a golfing analogy, kind of the right club, right hole for a lot of these leaders right now.
What is one misconception about AI in the enterprises that you wish that more people can understand this?
It's interesting. I think there's this expectation that you're going to do an initial AI use case and you're going to see a massive change. AI, like it's magic. If I do AI, how's that show up immediately on my bottom line? And it has to show up on your bottom line or you're wasting your time. But the way to think about it, AI is you're impacting decision points, which means to really have an impact, you need to impact more decision points. And based on the connection of those decision points, you can start to expect a non-linear curve in terms of value. But you have to be impacting lots of decision points through AI, which implies levels of scale, which is harder work than just doing an AI use case. What I'm not saying is you have to build out all the scale before you see value. No, you do one use case and you build some scale into it to make the next project a little bit easier and cheaper and faster. And you do that over time so that you're getting value as you're building out that scalable capability. But you have to think about it as you're implementing a system as opposed to I'm doing an AI use case. And I think that's a misconception. But when you think about it, one decision point, how big an impact can that have? You go back to Lean Six Sigma and you have one process improvement. It's good. You improved a task. It doesn't change your business. But if you were to change enough of them, you could change your business model. And AI works the same way.
Okay. So if you have been appointed as a data leader for any organization and you can choose the sector you want to be, retail, finance or tech. So how you will start identifying the problems?
I've been data leader across financial services. I've been a data and AI leader across financial, large financial services company as well as retail. And throughout my life, through a career, you have a lot of context switches as you move into different roles based on needs of the organizations you're in. I think the most important thing, like anything else, listen and learn. As a data leader, as any shared services leader, you're there to benefit the businesses that are facing off against the customers. So I think before you start changing things and before you start really sharing all of your knowledge, like I had one person tell me at one point, and he's like, Todd, before you go into that company, just remember, they already think you're smart or they wouldn't have hired you. And I think that's true for everyone. No company's going to hire someone they don't think they're smart. So the pressure on you proving how smart you are in the first few months really isn't there. I think the pressure is on listening, understanding, and learning so that you can craft discussions which lead to recommendations, which lead to strategies that are actually helpful within the context of that business. And so you see a lot of people kind of run in and say, I know AI, I'm here to change it. That's what you told me in the interview. What companies really want is they want change that works within the context of their culture, of their business, and of their priorities.
How difficult is it to change in the culture of any business?
Well, I'll tell you what, change is never easy in any circumstance. I think the hardest change is if a company's in distress or a business unit's in distress, it's generally easier to go in there and change it. But the companies that are doing well now but need to change to do well in the future, those are the hardest, because it's kind of like when you're in the bathtub, you're sitting in warm water. It's warm, it feels good. It's hard to get out, but ultimately it's going to get cold. So you want to do something, add a little more water. I think, that example's there. A company's doing well, they're comfortable. Why change? It's hard to realize what's going to happen in 3 years, 5 years if they don't change. So that's probably the hardest class of change that I've come across in my career. The other thing I would say is if you don't understand how decisions are made in an organization, you do not appreciate and value the culture, and you do not understand the landscape around who is empowered to make decisions, it's impossible to drive change.
One advice which you want to share with the data startups or young professional entering into this field?
Yeah, I'll give you a few pieces of advice. First, I would say, with what's going to happen with the world and the fact that the world's going to be driven increasingly by decisions that are improved or activated through data and advanced analytics, I'd say get excited about it. Realize that you are in a vocation that provides you with an opportunity to have an impact, at the right time, at the right moment in time, where your career set and skill set lines up well with what's needed in the marketplace. So get excited about it. 2, with that, make sure that you're executing in a way that is consistent with the values and ethics that lead to outcomes so that we all have a world that is consistent with our values and we get to live in a way that is being built that is informed by those values. And probably the other big thing, lifelong learner. I will continue to go back. Careers are short and they're long. When you're early, it feels like they go on forever. When you're pretty senior in your career, you look back and you realize, it goes by pretty quick. But the one constant I found throughout my entire career, whether I was driving ships in the military, whether I was running tech, consultancies, operations, financial services, retail, AI, whatever it was, one of my biggest behaviors that led to the successes I've been able to enjoy and the ability to rebound when things did not go well was a voracious appetite for learning and being a lifelong learner. Be introspective when you make mistakes. Don't be overly proud of yourself when you're successful, because that next mistake, if you're really pushing it, it's probably just around the corner. But make sure you're taking that feedback loop and learning from it. Make sure you're putting extra cycles in at nights and over the weekend to stay abreast and to learn. Make sure you're connecting yourself to the right network so you can contribute knowledge, but also knowledge can be contributed back to you. I think that lifelong learning aspect is the most important thing, because no matter what happens, say data and AI don't become important. We all go back to farms. Not going to happen. But even in that situation, if you're a lifelong learner, you're putting yourself in a better position than if you're not.
Thank you so much, Todd, for sharing your insights about AI, strategy, business transformation, and the future of decision making, how it will gonna impact further. And your experiences and advice will gonna help many leaders. Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure having you here today.
It's a pleasure speaking with you, and I sincerely appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.